I came across it by accident. Not because I was looking for anything in particular. Just one of those evenings when the TV didn't hold my attention and my email inbox seemed like as good a distraction as any. Carmen was out showing a property to some new clients over in Clearwater, or so she'd said when she left, kissing me on the cheek the way she always did when she was in a hurry. I logged in to check the balance on the joint account. Nothing unusual in that. I like knowing where the money stands at the end of a month. Always have. It's a habit from my first marriage, one of the few that served me well. That's when I saw it. Not a large transaction, nothing dramatic. Just to transfer $1,200 to a business account I didn't recognize. Fernandez Imports, LLC. Dated 3 days prior. Could have been anything. A deposit on furniture. A favor for a client. Carmen's world is full of deals and brokers and deposits. But it stood out to me for one reason only. It wasn't categorized the way her usual work expenses are. Not staging, not closing costs, not inspection services. Just transfer. I flagged it in my mind, not out of suspicion. Not yet. More a quiet curiosity. My name is Thomas Reed. I'm 49 years old. I work as a logistics manager for a freight company in Tampa, Florida. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. Trucks go where I tell them. Shipments arrive when I say they will. People trust me to keep things moving, to keep things accounted for. I've been with Carmen for a little over 3 years now. Realtor. Smart. Lively. Easy to trust. Too easy maybe. She's 10 years younger than me. Full of energy, always on the go. For a long time, I thought I needed that. Thought it pulled me out of something I didn't want to become, middle-aged, divorced, and invisible. When I met her, I was a year past my divorce. She sold me the condo I still live in. We had drinks after the signing. The rest happened on its own. I closed the banking app and sat there a while, staring at the muted TV. Some crime drama rerun. Actors arguing over evidence they found too late. I couldn't even follow it. My mind was already elsewhere, retracing steps. Carmen had mentioned Clearwater because that was her usual radius. Safe ground. Familiar turf. Sarasota was where she sometimes took clients she called problem children. Out-of-towners who wanted waterfront views on Midwestern budgets. She hadn't mentioned Sarasota today. But I remember Darren at work, a week ago maybe, telling me he thought he saw her grabbing coffee near Sarasota's marina on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd shrugged it off. Carmen had her own schedule. I didn't keep tabs. Still, something about that transfer kept catching in my thoughts like a splinter. I pulled out my laptop and logged into the account again. Went back through statements for the past 6 months. Slowly. Carefully. That's how I do things. Not like a detective. Just like a man who's learned not to trust what he remembers until he checks. Fernandez Imports, LLC showed up 3 more times. Small amounts. Even. Regular. It wasn't furniture. It wasn't staging. It wasn't business. It was deliberate. I looked up the name. Florida Business Registry. Active company. Owner, Luis Fernandez. No address listed beyond a P.O. box in Sarasota. Luis Fernandez. I couldn't remember Carmen ever mentioning the name. I closed the laptop. The house was quiet. The sun had gone down without me noticing. I got up, turned off the TV I hadn't been watching, poured myself a glass of water from the fridge, stood there a moment, leaning on the counter, letting the cold seep through the glass into my palm. No anger. Not yet. No suspicion in the loud, movie sense of the word. Just the slow, methodical feeling of a question beginning to form. A problem beginning to define itself. I didn't call Carmen to ask. I didn't text her. That's not how I handle things. I waited until the next morning. When she came home late, she said traffic had been murder, smiled the way she always did when she wanted things to stay light. I smiled back, kissed her goodnight, let her sleep. Then I got up early. Coffee. Quiet. Checked the bank again. Another small transfer pending. Same name. Luis Fernandez. I thought about the last few months. How she'd been worried about her commission checks. How she'd mentioned Luis once in passing. Now that I put it together, a client in Sarasota. She'd brushed it off. I went to work that day like always. Checked shipments. Signed off on deliveries. Said good morning to Darren and didn't mention Sarasota. That night, when Carmen asked if I wanted to drive out to Clearwater with her Saturday for some property she was showing, I said sure. Watched her relax. Watched her think everything was fine. But in my mind, the question was already fixed in place. Not about the money. Not really. Not anymore. About the pattern. The shape of something underneath the surface I'd trusted too easily. It wasn't suspicion I felt. Not yet. Just the first steps of something quieter, slower, more patient than suspicion. Something methodical. I would find out. Not by asking. Not by accusing. By paying attention. By doing what I've always done. Keeping the books clean. Watching the lines. Seeing where they lead. And they were already starting to lead somewhere. Somewhere named Luis. Somewhere south of here. Somewhere I'd been told didn't matter. But it did. The next week passed without incident. On the surface, Carmen kept her rhythm. Calls in the morning, viewings midday, late dinners with me when our schedules aligned. Nothing in her voice, in her manner, gave away what I was starting to understand beneath the surface. I didn't accuse her. I didn't give myself away. That isn't how I operate. You don't fix a leak by yelling at the water. You trace it, follow it, understand where it starts. Each morning, while she showered or went through her calls in the other room, I gathered small things. Statements. Transfer records. I printed them out neatly, organized them in a folder I kept at work, not at home. A habit from my first marriage, again. You keep quiet. You keep records. One afternoon, during lunch, I took a drive. Not home. Not to Carmen's office. To see Harold. Harold Nichols had been a casual friend for 20 years, a golfing buddy of my former boss, someone you'd trust with a contract, not your confessions. But trust builds over years, and Harold had been the one who quietly handled my divorce filings when my ex decided she'd rather start over with someone from her gym than with me. He worked now mostly in real estate law. I figured that put him closer to Carmen's world than I was comfortable admitting. We sat in his small, windowless office in a plaza outside Sarasota, neutral ground. I showed him the folder without much preamble. Harold flipped through it slowly, one page at a time, his reading glasses low on his nose. He made a small sound, almost like approval, when he saw the business name repeated across the months. You ever ask her about these directly? No. He nodded. Good. Don't. That was Harold. Direct. Dry as salt. Reliable. You're telling me, I said, that this looks wrong. I'm telling you this isn't looks anymore. He tapped a page. If this was just personal, you'd still be in gray water. But this is joint funds. Commingled assets. That gives you footing. Footing for what? Unwinding it. Protecting yourself. And if it turns out she's committing fraud, and this smells like it, you'll want that distance made clear. Paper trail. Timeline. Clean exits. I leaned back. Let it settle in. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised, not fully. But it's something different to hear another man say it aloud. You know the name? I asked. He tapped the papers again. Luis Fernandez? Not offhand. But I can find out. Don't make noise. Not yet. He smiled thinly. Noise isn't how I work. We agreed on the next steps. Harold would pull records, marital filings, business ownership, anything public. I'd keep collecting quietly. If Carmen was financing this man's business while pretending to play house with me, I wanted to see it fully on paper before I made a move. That night, Carmen brought home wine. Smiled the way she always did when she wanted the world to feel easy. She asked nothing about my day. Told me about a couple looking for a fixer-upper in St. Pete. I listened, nodded, let her believe everything was still smooth. Later, while she slept, I went through her office files at home. I didn't rifle. I observed. She wasn't careless, nothing dramatic left out. But I found one business card tucked into her notebook. Luis Fernandez. Fernandez Imports. Sarasota, Florida. Handwritten beneath it, warehouse lease renewal pending. That wasn't a client note. That was an investment note. The next morning, Harold called me. She's still married, he said. Legally. Luis Fernandez. Husband of record. No separation filings. No divorce filings. Registered address in Sarasota. Business tied directly to him. I said nothing for a long moment. Just let the words settle. Not surprised. Just clarified. Harold filled the silence. If she's been funneling funds from your joint accounts into his business under the pretense of partnership or personal use, that's actionable. Fraud, potentially. Especially if you didn't consent. I didn't. Then we start securing your side. Closing accounts. Freezing what can be frozen. You want my office to draft notices? Yes. He paused. And Thomas? Yeah. Don't tell her yet. Not until we've cleaned your end of it. I wasn't planning to. We ended the call. I went into work like any other day. Sat through meetings about shipment delays. Nodded along as Darren complained about the traffic. Listened to his stories about his kids' soccer tournaments. Said nothing about Sarasota. Said nothing about Carmen. But in my mind, the pieces were lining up. Not just the money. The days she spent with clients that had no addresses. The tension she tried to hide under easy smiles. I remembered once, maybe 2 months back, Carmen's mother Maria had said something when she thought I couldn't hear. We were at lunch, Carmen getting up to take a call. Maria had sighed and muttered something like, "Still with that boy in Sarasota." I hadn't thought much of it then. An ex, maybe. Old gossip. Family things you stay out of. Now it sounded different in my memory. Now it sounded like present tense. I made another appointment at the bank. Sat with Amy, the clerk I'd known for years, who handled our accounts with polite efficiency. I didn't give her details. Just said I needed to close the joint account, move my assets elsewhere. Freeze anything connected to shared access. She didn't ask why. Just nodded, processed the paperwork, handed me the confirmations. One more thread cut. Quietly. Cleanly. That night, Carmen mentioned Sarasota again. Casual. Offhand. Might have to run down there next week. Some warehouse thing I need to check on for a client. I smiled. Nodded. Anything you need from there? She asked. No, I said. Nothing I can think of. I watched her pour herself a glass of wine. The way her hand didn't shake. The way her smile stayed light. She thought she was still ahead of it. She thought the surface hadn't cracked. But below that surface, the water was already shifting. And I wasn't the one drowning. I started waking up earlier. Not for any reason I could explain to Carmen. Just a shift in rhythm. Coffee before dawn. Sitting by the window, watching the street come alive slowly. Joggers, dog walkers, delivery trucks. The same street I'd watched for 3 years now, thinking it was mine. Thinking this life was settled. Funny how you can live inside a story and only realize too late you were reading it wrong. The emails came in from Harold, steady and precise. Copies of property filings, bank records, marriage licenses, public documents tying Carmen and Luis together in black and white. Sarasota County records confirmed it all. Still legally married, still financially entangled. A house jointly owned there. A business registered to his name but fed, in part, by money drawn from accounts she'd presented to me as ours. No separation papers. No divorce filings. Not even a quiet legal distancing behind the scenes. Together. Still together. I thought back through it all. 3 years of dinners, holidays, plans for some vague future. Talks about maybe buying a place of our own eventually. Carmen always waved that off. Too soon. The market's insane right now. I'd taken it at face value, trusted her to know the terrain better than I did. Realtor's instinct, I figured. No need to rush. Now I saw it differently. No need to entangle her husband's assets any deeper than necessary. No need to complicate what she'd already been doing under my nose. Luke said something to me once, maybe a year ago, over a drink on his porch. You like her because she's trouble, he'd said. You won't admit it, but that's half the draw. Keeps you from feeling old. I'd shrugged it off then. Easy words from a man who'd never remarried, who trusted dogs more than people. But there was truth in it. Carmen had been a way to feel like life wasn't over yet. Vibrant, unpredictable, restless in a way I convinced myself was ambition, not warning. And there had been warnings. I saw them now like footprints I'd chosen to ignore. The trips to Sarasota that didn't match any listings on her schedule. The calls she'd step outside to take, voices lowered but tense. The nervous energy some days, pacing the kitchen with her wine glass untouched. When I'd ask what was wrong, she'd kiss my cheek and say, just work headaches, nothing big. Even Maria, her mother, dropping little threads without realizing. Luis always makes things harder than they need to be. If she could just get free of that nonsense down there. Statements I'd heard, nodded at, let pass. I'd thought, down there, meant some old mess Carmen was putting behind her. I didn't ask questions. I thought not asking was trust. Thought it made me better than the jealous men who pry and accuse. Turns out it just made me easier to fool. I'd ignored the signs because they weren't loud. Carmen didn't vanish for days. She didn't come home drunk or smelling of strangers. She wasn't cruel. She didn't shout. She kept everything smooth on the surface. Dinners made, appointments kept, affection doled out in measured, believable portions. That's the trick, I suppose. Big betrayals rarely come with big noise. They come in increments. Small withdrawals you don't notice until the account is empty. Harold confirmed Luis's business had been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. Carmen had been patching holes with funds drawn quietly from wherever she could reach without raising alarms. Our joint account was just one faucet in a larger network she controlled. Harold showed me the diagrams, the transfers, the connections like threads between pins on a map. Sarasota, Tampa, Clearwater, all tied through her hands. I thought back to conversations we'd had, jokes about how I managed freight and she managed chaos. That's why we work, she'd say. You're structure, I'm instinct. I'd laughed. Thought it was true. The truth was simpler. I brought stability. She siphoned it. I spent a Saturday afternoon driving down to Sarasota. Not to confront anyone. Just to see. I parked near the marina where Darren had said he spotted her. Walked the streets, quiet in the heat, past real estate offices, shuttered storefronts, the kind of places where small businesses like Fernandez Imports hang on by their fingertips. I stood across the street from a low-slung building with a peeling sign and a locked door. Fernandez Imports, it said. The only movement inside was a ceiling fan ticking slowly in the gloom. It looked like every failing venture I'd ever shipped to or from. Empty promises wrapped in paperwork. I didn't go inside, just watched a while, then drove home without speaking to anyone. At night, I lay next to Carmen and thought about how this would play out. How men like Luis keep women like Carmen tied down, through money, through debts, through promises made when they were younger and thought life would be easier. How Carmen kept me tied, not through love, but through the simple momentum of shared days and shared accounts. It wasn't about love anymore, if it ever had been. It was about control, about what she could pull from me to keep her sinking ship afloat. I wasn't angry. Not really. Anger burns too hot for too short a time. What I felt was colder, measured, like closing a valve slowly, knowing exactly how much pressure it takes to stop the flow without a sound. I started putting pieces in place, separating accounts, securing my pension, quietly informing HR to update my records, remove her from any emergency contacts, any benefits. Small moves, each one deliberate. No confrontation, no declarations, just the slow, patient unwinding of ties she thought were permanent. The next time Carmen mentioned Sarasota, she said it the same way as always. Lightly, offhand. Might head down next week. You know how it is with clients. I smiled. Of course. She kissed me, thinking nothing had changed. But everything had. Just not in ways she could see yet. The steps, once they're in motion, take on a rhythm of their own. Harold handled most of it. That's what you pay good lawyers for. Not to argue, not to accuse, just to quietly prepare the ground beneath you so that when things shift, you're standing steady and the other party isn't. The first thing was the accounts. What Amy had helped me begin, Harold finished. Every shared asset I'd allowed Carmen access to, directly or indirectly, was closed, frozen, or moved beyond her reach. Quiet notices sent. Quiet acknowledgments returned. You're clean now, Harold said one afternoon as we sat in his office. Papers spread between us like pieces of a finished puzzle. Financially, legally, if she tries anything further, it won't touch you. I nodded. What about him? Luis? He's already touched. The business is bleeding. State filings show debts he can't cover without outside cash. And thanks to your documentation, we can show your funds were pulled without full disclosure. Fraud's on the table. I didn't ask about criminal charges. That wasn't my aim. I wasn't looking for punishment. I was looking for separation, for silence. But Harold filed notices anyway, with the state, with Carmen's licensing board, with the relevant financial institutions. Quiet paperwork, written in the language of facts and evidence, not accusation. The kind of language people like Carmen understand best because there's no arguing with it. Within a week, I had what I wanted. My name off her accounts. My name off anything tied to her work. My assets locked down where no one but me could reach them. The text came late on a Wednesday. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Thursday brought a voicemail. Her voice, still calm, still soft. Practiced. I think there's been some confusion. I know you're upset. Just let's talk, face to face. Clear things up. There was no confusion. Only clarity now. Friday, another message. Less smooth. A little more edge beneath the surface. I don't know what Harold told you, but it's not what it looks like. Luis and I, it's complicated. I was protecting you from. I deleted it. Harold forwarded me a notice from the real estate board. Investigation pending. Possible license suspension for failure to disclose financial conflicts of interest. I pictured her face when she read that letter. The calculation behind her eyes, measuring options, weighing angles. Not panic. Carmen never panicked. But the slow realization that her avenues were closing one by one, and none of it loud enough for her to manipulate. Saturday morning, she showed up. Not announced. Just walked in with the spare key I'd forgotten to collect. That was on me. A small oversight in a plan that had, until then, been flawless. I was at the kitchen counter, coffee in hand. I didn't flinch. Didn't greet her. Just watched her stand there in the doorway, keys in her hand like they meant something still. You've been busy, she said. Not angry. Not sad. Just stating it. So have you, I said. She stepped in, closed the door, set her purse down gently, like this was still her home. Thomas, let's not make this ugly. It's not ugly. It's just done. You don't understand how complicated this got. Luis, it wasn't what you think. I said nothing. Let her fill the silence, as people like her always do. I was getting out. I just needed time. I didn't want to drag you into his mess. I thought I could fix it first. I sipped my coffee. I love you, she tried. No, you don't, I said. Not cruel, just honest. She stood there a while, watching me like she might still find an angle left unclosed. Then her expression shifted. Acceptance, maybe, or calculation deferred. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, she said finally. I nodded. That's what you forgot to account for. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'll have Harold send my things. You won't need to. They're already packed. She left then, quietly. No scene, no tears, just a closing door and footsteps fading down the hall. I changed the locks an hour later. Harold sent confirmation the following week. Licenses suspended pending inquiry. Joint assets formally severed. Fraud claims under review by the board and the bank. Luis's business would likely fold within months. Carmen's career would take longer to unravel, but unravel it would. Through it all, I felt not triumphant, not vindicated, just quiet, steady, like a man who'd been standing still so long he'd almost forgotten how solid ground could feel beneath his feet again. No celebration, no confrontation, just closure. One thread after another, cut and tied off, until the whole mess lay behind me, not touching me anymore. I went back to my routines. Early mornings, coffee, watching the street wake up. The world didn't look different, but I did. I'd stepped out of something. I didn't need to name it, and I didn't need to look back. The move to Sarasota wasn't dramatic. I packed my things myself. No movers, no favors asked. A rented truck, a storage unit, a set of keys exchanged for another. It felt cleaner that way. Simple. Tampa had begun to feel cramped long before Carmen. Too many intersections I couldn't cross without remembering some part of what had unraveled there. The office, the condo, the same grocery store aisles where I'd passed Luis Fernandez's name in my thoughts without knowing it. Better to draw a line. Start fresh, even if fresh didn't mean new. Sarasota wasn't new to me. I'd hauled freight through it for 20 years. I knew the streets by their lights and their warehouse docks more than their coffee shops or neighborhoods. Still, there was comfort in that. A city that had always been honest in its purpose. I found a small house not far from the marina. Modest, clean lines, quiet neighbors. A place where nobody asked questions beyond polite greetings. The realtor, a man this time, gray-haired and efficient, remarked that it was rare to find someone my age buying alone, without plans for remodeling or flipping. I smiled, signed the paperwork, and said nothing. Luke drove down once to see it. We sat on the back step with beers in hand, watching the sun pull long shadows across the lawn. You all right? He asked eventually. I shrugged. All right enough. He didn't push. That's why we've stayed friends. Some men don't need things explained to know they're understood. Work carried on. Freight still needed routing. Schedules still needed fixing. From my new office, I could hear the gulls in the mornings, smell salt off the water. Better than exhaust fumes and endless construction. My routines settled around me like a coat I hadn't realized still fit. Early mornings, coffee by the window, watching joggers, dog walkers, delivery trucks. A different street now, but the same rhythm. Predictable. Steady. Once in a while, I'd pass Paula, Carmen's old colleague, now based here. We'd nod in passing at the grocery store, at the gas station. She never asked what happened. Never brought up Carmen or Tampa. Just a polite hello, a glance that said she understood more than she'd say. I respected that. Harold sent updates, less and less frequent as the months passed. Carmen's license suspended, her accounts scrutinized, her involvement with Luis dragged through enough paperwork to ensure neither of them would recover cleanly. Luis's business folded in silence. No headlines. Just a closed door, a disconnected phone line, a new name on an old lease. Sometimes I wondered where Carmen had landed. Not often. Curiosity fades faster than people think, once it no longer serves a purpose. There was no anger left in it. No satisfaction either. Just absence. A space cleared where noise used to live. I started fixing up the house in small ways. New locks, new paint. A bench by the front door for mornings when the sun was good and the coffee strong. Neighbors waved. I waved back. No entanglements, no expectations. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you build by subtraction. I kept my name off everything but the essentials. No joint accounts. No shared deeds. I like seeing my name alone on the paperwork now. Clean lines. No shadows. Some evenings I'd walk down to the water. Watch boats I didn't own ease in and out of slips I didn't pay for. Watch lights come on in homes filled with voices I didn't recognize. No envy. Just an observation. Sometimes a woman might nod hello, a stranger. Sometimes not even that. I didn't look for anything more. I didn't need it. Control isn't loud. It isn't grand. It's quiet mornings and knowing every key in your pocket belongs to you and no one else. And no one's taking them again. Not now. Not ever.
Thanks for listening. Enjoyed the story? A like, a share, or even a comment helps us keep going.